Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of Books and Bytes.
It's great to be back, and you've picked quite the book for us to deep dive into.
We have, haven't we? Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix. Where do we even begin? There's just so much packed into this one.
Well, this is the longest book in the series, and for good reason. I think a good place to start is by saying that this book is a real turning point for Harry. He's dealing with some pretty heavy stuff, grief and isolation, and then you've got the Ministry of Magic just being awful.
Yeah, it's not all fun and games anymore.
No, definitely not. But even with all that darkness, you still see those flickers of hope and bravery. This is where we see Harry really step up and take on more responsibility. He forms Dumbledore's army and really starts to grapple with what that prophecy actually means for him.
Okay, so before we get too deep into all of that, can you give our listener a quick recap of the main plot points, just the big picture stuff?
Sure. So the book opens with Harry stuck back with the Dursleys, right?
The Dursleys.
And he's just completely in the dark about what's going on in the wizarding world. I mean, he knows Voldemort's back, but no one will tell him anything.
And then, bam, Dementor attack and little whinging.
Right. Talk about setting the mood. That scene is so intense, and it really shows how far the Ministry will go to deny Voldemort's return. I mean, they try to expel Harry for using magic, even though he was protecting himself and Dudley.
Thankfully, the Order of the Phoenix shows up just in time to whisk him away to, where was it?
Number 12, Grimmauld Place. It's their secret headquarters.
And Sirius Black's old family home, right?
Exactly. But it's definitely not a happy place. I mean, the house itself is practically a character, all dark and full of secrets.
And speaking of secrets, Harry is frustrated that the Order is keeping him in the dark about pretty much everything.
Which is understandable. He's a teenager and he's in danger. And then things go from bad to worse when he gets back to Hogwarts.
Dolores Umbridge.
Ugh, don't even get me started on her. She's just the absolute worst. She comes in as this new Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher, but she's really just there to control everything and undermine Dumbledore.
And she refuses to teach them any practical magic, right?
Yeah.
Like actual spells they could use to defend themselves.
Nope. All theory all the time. Plus, her punishments are brutal. The blood quill. Still gives me chills just thinking about it.
Me too. So, to fight back against Umbridge and actually learn some defense, Harry forms Dumbledore's army.
Such a great moment. It really shows how resourceful and determined he is. The DA is this underground group of students who want to learn how to fight.
And how to protect themselves. Because, Voldemort's back, and the Ministry is doing nothing.
But even while he's leading the DA, Harry is starting to have these disturbing visions. He's seeing things from Voldemort's perspective, and it's really messing with him.
Dumbledore's a bit concerned, right?
He is. He realizes that the connection between Harry and Voldemort is growing stronger, so he decides that Harry needs to learn occlumency, to shield his mind. And who does he choose to teach him?
Wait, don't tell me. Snape?
Yep.
That's a recipe for disaster if I ever heard one.
It's as bad as you'd imagine. I mean, those two can barely stand to be in the same room together. Their lessons are just filled with anger and resentment.
So Harry's basically failing occlumency, which means
He's becoming more and more vulnerable to Voldemort's influence. And that's when things take a really, really dark turn.
the vision of Sirius being tortured.
Yeah, that's the one. Harry is convinced Sirius is in danger and he's got to save him right now.
And that's what leads them to the Ministry of Magic, right? The big battle.
Yep, the Department of Mysteries. It's an all-out war between the DA, the Order of the Phoenix, and Voldemort and his Death Eaters.
Talk about a cliffhanger.
It's brutal. I mean, the good guys win, but at a terrible cost. Sirius is killed.
I'm still not over that.
It's a tough one. It's that moment where Harry truly understands the cost of this war.
Okay, so that was the whirlwind tour of the major plot points. Let's take a breath and go back to the beginning. What do you say we start with Harry stuck at the Dursleys?
Sure. I mean, that's where it all begins, right? Harry's trapped, feeling completely ignored and angry. And on top of all that, no one's telling him anything about what's going on in the wizarding world.
He's basically a prisoner in his own home.
It's a terrible way to spend the summer. And then, to make things even worse, he gets attacked by Dementors.
Right, in his own neighborhood.
It's a terrifying scene, and it really highlights the danger of the Ministry's denial. They're so focused on pretending everything's fine that they're putting innocent people at risk.
It's like they're more afraid of the truth than they are of Voldemort himself.
I think you're right. They're clinging to this idea of normalcy when everything is falling apart around them.
And that denial is just going to make things worse in the long run.
Absolutely. The longer they refuse to acknowledge the threat, the stronger Voldemort will become.
Which is where the Order of the Phoenix comes in.
Right. They're this secret society of wizards who are actually willing to stand up to Voldemort.
And they're the ones who rescue Harry from the Dursleys.
They whisk him away to Grimmauld Place, which, let's be honest, is not exactly a cheerful place to hang out.
Grimmauld Place is like a character itself.
Yeah.
Dark, gloomy, and full of bad memories.
Yeah, and full of those creepy portraits, like Sirius's mother constantly screaming insults.
It's a constant reminder of the darker side of the wizarding world, the prejudice and the hatred that still exists.
And it's a stark contrast to Hogwarts, which, even though it has its own problems, is still a place where Harry feels a sense of belonging.
But even Hogwarts isn't the same this year. I mean, the Ministry has its claws sunk deep into the school.
And Umbridge is their little puppet, you know.
She's awful. She's like this evil Mary Poppins or something.
She's all smiles and pink cardigans on the outside, but underneath, she's a power-hungry tyrant.
And she's determined to control everything and everyone.
Exactly, and she's very good at manipulating people. She slowly gains more power, undermines Dumbledore, and just makes everyone miserable.
And she refuses to teach any real defense.
Which is crazy. I mean, Voldemort is back. You'd think that teaching students how to protect themselves would be a top priority.
But no, it's all about control with her. She wants to keep the students ignorant and obedient.
And that's exactly why Harry decides to form Dumbledore's army. He realizes that they can't rely on the adults to protect them.
So they have to take matters into their own hands.
And they do. The DA is all about learning practical magic, the kind of spells that can actually save their lives.
It's so inspiring, really. They're going against the Ministry, risking everything to learn how to fight.
It's a real act of rebellion, and it shows just how fed up they are with being controlled and manipulated.
But of course, nothing is ever easy for Harry. He starts having these visions, and things just get darker and more complicated from there.
That's where we'll pick up in the next part of our deep dive. So where were we? Yes, Harry and those pesky visions.
And he's not doing so well with those occupancy lessons, is he?
Not at all. And Hagrid, remember, he's still missing in action.
Oh, right. Dumbledore sent him off on that secret mission.
Which, thinking about it now, really mirrors what's happening with Umbridge at Hogwarts. Both are kind of tied to power, but in completely opposite ways.
Okay, I see where you're going with this. Hagrid's off doing Dumbledore's bidding. Dangerous stuff, but ultimately for the greater good, right?
Exactly. Dumbledore tasks him with reaching out to the giants. Think about that for a second.
Gaining their allegiance in the fight against Voldemort. That's a bold move.
Risky, for sure. Giants are powerful, unpredictable, not exactly known for subtle diplomacy.
Makes you wonder just how desperate things are getting for Dumbledore to take that gamble.
But while Hagrid's gone, Umbridge. She doesn't let a good power vacuum go to waste.
Oh, she goes after Hagrid big time, doesn't she?
Textbook authoritarian tactic. Discredit your opponent, sow fear and doubt. It's classic.
She uses Hagrid's giant heritage against him, doesn't she?
Plays on all those existing prejudices within the wizarding world. A reminder that even in a world of magic, bigotry is alive and well. And Umbridge, well, she's happy to weaponize it.
Awful woman. Makes me so angry how she treats Hagrid. He's like a big teddy bear most of the time.
And when he finally returns, injured, I might add, from his mission, Umbridge doesn't just stop at words, she physically attacks him.
I hated reading that part. It's just so unnecessary and cruel. But it does lead to one good thing. McGonagall stepping in.
Oh, Minerva McGonagall, what a legend. She's not about to let Umbridge get away with that. She puts herself right in the line of fire to protect Hagrid.
Seriously, Professor McGonagall is the definition of courage and loyalty.
But as we know, Umbridge doesn't back down easily, and her retaliation is swift and brutal, uses a combination of dark magic and straight-up ministry-sanctioned force to seriously injure McGonagall.
Chilling stuff. It's like Umbridge and Voldemort are two sides of the same coin, you know? Both using fear and force to get what they want.
Disturbingly true. Power corrupts, and sometimes even those institutions meant to protect us. They become the oppressors.
So we've got this power struggle playing out on a grand scale, but Harry, he's dealing with his own demons, right?
Internally, it's chaos for him. Still grieving Cedric, those visions are getting worse. The connection between him and Voldemort is intensifying. He's feeling Voldemort's emotions, thoughts.
Yeah.
It's no wonder he's spiraling.
Imagine being 15 and having that going on in your head.
And then you've got the occlumency lessons. Meant to help, right?
But with Snape.
Yeah.
Seriously, who thought that was a good idea?
From the start, it's doomed. The animosity between them is almost palpable, creates this huge barrier to any actual learning.
Plus, Snape's methods. Let's just say they're not exactly known for their gentleness.
He seems to relish Harry's struggles, almost like he's punishing him for James Potter's past sins, which, let's be honest, is a lot for a teenager to deal with.
So Harry's failing occlumency, his connection to Voldemort, is wide open.
Leaving him vulnerable to manipulation. And Voldemort, being the master manipulator that he is, takes full advantage.
Plants that vision of Sirius being tortured, doesn't he?
The ultimate emotional trigger.
Yeah.
And it works. Harry, driven by fear, love for Sirius, doesn't think straight.
He just reacts, goes against Dumbledore, gathers his friends, and off they go to the Ministry.
Talk about impulsive, but it speaks to their loyalty, doesn't it? They're ready to risk everything for each other, which leads us to
The Department of Mysteries, the battle that changes everything.
an epic showdown. The DA, the Order of the Phoenix versus Voldemort and his Death Eaters. And it's during this chaos that the full prophecy is revealed.
The one that links Harry and Voldemort's destiny.
The one that says either must die at the hand of the other. And in the midst of this fight for survival, a terrible price is paid.
Sirius.
His death shatters Harry. It's a loss that will define him. The boy we met at the start of this book, he's gone.
He loses his innocence, faces the true cost of war.
But it's not just about loss, is it? It's about choice. Dumbledore reminds us of this. We're as strong as we are united, weak as we are divided.
Last time, we left Harry, well, devastated after the loss of Sirius, and trying to understand that prophecy.
It's a lot to process. Not only is he grieving, but he's starting to realize the depth of Voldemort's manipulation.
I mean, Voldemort basically used Harry's love for Sirius to lure him into a trap.
And that realization leads to a very intense confrontation with Dumbledore.
Oh yeah, back at Hogwarts when Harry just explodes.
All that pent-up anger and grief just comes pouring out. It's a really powerful scene.
And Dumbledore, he doesn't try to stop Harry, does he?
No. He just lets Harry rage. He understands that sometimes you just need to let it all out.
And once the dust settles, so to speak, Dumbledore finally reveals the full prophecy.
The one made by Sybil Trelawney all those years ago. The one that binds Harry and Voldemort together.
And it's not exactly good news, is it?
Not really. It basically says that either Harry or Voldemort has to die. There's no other way.
Talk about a heavy burden for a teenager.
It really makes you think about fate versus free will. Does Harry even have a choice in all of this?
And that's a question that comes up again and again in this book, right? I mean, think about Harry's conversation with nearly headless Nick.
Oh, yeah, when Harry's asking about ghosts. Trying to understand what happens after death.
It's like he's trying to find a way for Sirius to still be alive somehow.
And nearly headless Nick, he admits that maybe becoming a ghost wasn't the best choice. That he might have been better off moving on.
Which is interesting, right? Even in death, there's this idea of choice, of making the most of your existence.
And then you have the complete opposite with Umbridge.
She's all about control, isn't she?
Totally. She wants to dictate everyone's thoughts and actions.
But when she tries to use the Cruciatus curse on Harry...
It backfires. Because Harry's pain, his grief for Sirius, is so powerful that it creates a shield against her dark magic.
I love that.
Yeah.
It shows that even in our darkest moments, our emotions can be a source of strength.
Exactly. And Umbridge, she just doesn't get it. She underestimates the power of love, of loyalty, of defiance.
And remember that awesome line Harry throws at her.
You haven't got what it takes to control people who are used to fighting Voldemort.
It gives me chills every time I read it. It's like he's speaking for everyone who's been fighting against Umbridge and the Ministry.
And in the end, Umbridge gets what she deserves. The centaurs come to Harry's rescue.
I love that scene. She's so terrified of them. It's a little bit satisfying, to be honest.
It is. It shows that there are forces in this world that even Umbridge can't control.
And the Ministry finally has to acknowledge what she's been doing and remove her from Hogwarts.
It's a victory, but it's bittersweet. I mean, Sirius is still gone.
And the damage Umbridge caused, that's not going to disappear overnight.
No, but there's hope, too. The students, they've learned how to fight back.
They formed bonds, they found their voices.
Yeah.
They're not going to be controlled so easily anymore.
And that's really the heart of this book, isn't it? It's about finding the strength to resist, to stand up for what you believe in, even when it's hard.
And it's about the power of friendship and love. Those connections, they can sustain us through even the darkest times.
Exactly. And as we reach the end of our deep dive into Order of the Phoenix, I think those are the things we should hold on to.
We've seen how choices, both big and small, can shape our destinies. We've witnessed the devastating effects of fear and prejudice.
And we've been reminded of the importance of fighting for what's right, even when it feels like the odds are stacked against you.
So to all of you listening, thank you for joining us on this journey through Order of the Phoenix.
Keep those wands at the ready, and we'll see you on our next deep dive.